Hello, my friends. Amber posted that she's missing her live stream, the one that people are paying for, and then skipping a video, or I guess she's shifting her videos back a couple days. But in that post, she had to mention that she got bad news. You know, her need for sympathy just knows no bounds. Every time anything happens with her videos or her channel, she has to mention that something bad is happening, you guys. And she does it because she knows people in the comments are going to be like, "Oh, girl, we're so sorry. I hope you're okay." That's what she lives for. But that leaves a couple days open, and there's something I've been thinking about ever since I posted the video talking about the Doordash Stalker guy and the messages that he's been sending. I've gotten a lot of comments kind of comparing it to FBI Frank, and, you know, generally, I'd say the community's pretty split on whether they're real or not. And I've been kind of going back and forth, so I thought I would share my thoughts with you, because either way, whether it's real or not, there are actually some pretty important lessons we can learn from this situation. And I absolutely know that I could be wrong on any one of these points, but I'm just gonna kind of give you my thought process. So if you'd like to like and subscribe, that would literally be hectic. I'm not gonna lie. So we're gonna start with the messages themselves. And I went over this a little bit in the last video, but I'm gonna give a little bit more of my thought process and kind of what I've kind of come up with since then. So this on the left is mine. This is a screenshot from my phone when I had a Dasher contact me and I screenshotted it. Now, I am on Android, she's on Apple, so there's gonna be a little bit of difference, but the icons are the same, you know, the send button is the same, so there are a lot of similarities. So it looks like it is in the Doordash app, and that means a few things, and we'll get to that in a second, but the first thing that jumps out at anybody who looks at her messages is that it's translated from Spanish. Okay, so let's start there. At first, it could go either way, where it's like, that makes it seem less plausible because that's weird, but that also kind of gives it some authenticity because it's really unusual. And when you look at other instances of DoorDashers flirting with customers, and oddly enough, there are a lot of them on the internet, you just don't see that very much. So it being an outlier kind of gives it some authenticity. And I want to get this out of the way right now. I've heard some people say that they heard that somebody saw these screenshots on Reddit, and that might be where she got them. I have looked all over the internet. I've Googled every kind of combination I could think of as far as, like, you know, Dasher flirts with customer or Dasher DMs, all kinds of stuff like that. And I couldn't find anything. I found a lot of DMs flirting with customers, but not these specific ones. And on Reddit, the only time I found these was from the Amberlynn subreddit, where people had taken the screenshot from her video and were talking about it. But that being said, it is very possible that these are out there on the internet somewhere, and that's where she got them. Obviously, if that's the case, if somebody finds them, finds the originals, then obviously whatever I'm going to say in this video is null and void. She was lying because she stole it from the internet. But given the information that I have at this moment, it looks like these are at least original. I don't know that I'm ready to say they're legit yet, but they are at least original to her. Okay? So let's think of what it would take for these to be fake. The first option is that she either knows somebody who works at DoorDash or has some access to a DoorDash account, because you can't just start sending messages to people unless you have an order. So in fact, to get this message, I really was happy that she messaged me first, because I was trying to think of some way to message this person without sounding weird. So I was thinking, like, should I text, just leave it at the door? I mean, that's what it already says, so that would be weird. Should I text, like, how far away are you? But then I don't want to sound impatient. So luckily, they messaged me first so I could get the screenshot. So you have to have a Dasher assigned to your order to be able to message back and forth. You can't just go, hey, I want to find, like, my Dasher here is Sarah. I couldn't like go find Sarah and start messaging her without an active order. Now, we know Amberlynn has active orders constantly, so that isn't an issue. There are lots of times during the day that she will have an active order where she can be communicating with somebody. But in order to fake these, she would have to either talk to somebody that she knows through Doordash and convince them to send these messages, or have access to somebody's phone or account where she could send herself messages. If they were regular DMs, then that would make sense. That would be very possible, but it is pretty unlikely that she would have access to somebody's Doordash account, because that's the only way this could happen, is if you have a dasher and a customer, and she would have access to both sides of that, or have somebody willing to send these to fake it, right? Which is possible, I guess, but that's kind of reaching. Another option for these being fake is if Amber like photoshopped these. And let's think about that for a minute. You know, she doesn't even make thumbnails for her videos. She just picks the most provocative shot from her video and just posts a picture. That's it. I mean, she would have had to get the font right, and these look pretty accurate. And I know you guys can't really see it very well. This has a little bubble around it, and so do these, but I can see them better on my screen. There are little bubbles around this. So from looking at these, it looks pretty legit and consistent. And these I cut off. So I know that these two on this side are different sizes. I just cut off the sides a little bit to make it fit, but this is the full size, what they would look like. And I kept this one so that we could see the red button and the same there, okay? So I just don't see her having the skills or work ethic, you know, or motivation to Photoshop something like this. We know she has faked stuff in the past, but usually what that means is she has just messaged herself. You know, either had a girlfriend message her, or she messaged herself from a different phone or something like that, which, again, if this was a regular message, that would be an absolute possibility. But this is even more difficult because there has to be a Doordash, not a Doordash account, but a Doordasher account involved. So I just don't see Photoshop being an option here. I don't think she's creative enough. I don't think she has the smarts or the brains to do something like that. And then on top of all of that, she would have had to think to herself, whether she's photoshopping it or having somebody send her the messages, she would have to think, let's do it in Spanish so that it will translate it so that it'll look even more authentic. And do you really think Amberlynn Reed has the forethought or the imagination to come up with something like that? Come on. Like, we're talking the girl that peaked at 4 years old by putting hair in her teeth because of her rotten front teeth.
Behind her teeth, they were so rotten. It's called baby bottle syndrome. They were so rotten you couldn't tell that she was making her own cap by pulling the fur off the bear and putting it in the holes. So when she sucked her bottle, it didn't hurt.
That's smart.
Isn't that
Damn,
weird?
I'm smart even at 4.
as soon as
Take me out of the equation and just imagine a 4-year-old girl being smart enough to know, let me take the stuffing out of my
you were
bear
making your own,
to put it behind your tooth because it hurts when you're...
and I didn't put it together.
So, come on. She's not going to be sending herself stuff in Spanish just to translate it to make it look more authentic. I just don't see that happening. Now, again, with all of this, is it possible? I guess, but at this point, I would say that's reaching quite a bit, okay? So as far as the messages themselves, I am pretty convinced that these are real. I think there's some person sending her these messages through the Doordash app, and I think it's unlikely that it's somebody that she knows to fake it, okay? Now, the stories around the messages, I'm not convinced that the guy yelled, "Are you married?
Are you married?" And like, for some reason, like, when I get uncomfortable, like, I just automatically say yes.
He's sending you stuff in Spanish. Now, I understand that people can speak a little bit of English and it's probably easier to type in Spanish and, you know, whatever. So it's not unlikely that somebody would speak in English, but it just adds more inconsistency to the whole thing. So I don't know. I think all the stories surrounding the messages and all the stuff that she's saying is happening in real life is a little exaggerated. But let's just go forward, assuming that these are real. Again, reserving the right to be proven wrong at any moment if somebody finds the originals, you know, or if more information comes out, I absolutely will be happy to admit that I'm wrong, because I think it would be more fun if she turned out to be faking this. But here's the thing. There are a couple lessons learned assuming that these are real. The first is maybe don't interact with your DoorDash drivers so much. They are strangers, which is a lesson she could probably learn about people on the internet in general. That's how she ended up with Emily. That's how she ended up with Erica. She meets people online, talks to them for a short period of time, and assumes that they're good people and meets up with them. She's lucky she hasn't turned up in a ditch somewhere, you know? Especially as a single woman living alone at her size, because what is she gonna do if she goes out and the person has ill intent or sees her and decides, ooh, I can have ill intent, you know, and just pushes her down? What is she gonna do? She will be completely at his mercy, we'll say. So maybe meeting the DoorDasher and talking to them is not a great idea. Now, I understand that that is her social interaction for every day. You know, that is how she's making friends, is through her DoorDasher. But she should probably keep her safety in mind when it comes to interacting with DoorDashers, because as we can see, just because it's their job doesn't mean they're not going to be inappropriate or weird or dangerous. So my suggestion to Amberlynn would be just have them drop it off. I know you're going to lose your friends, but this is what happens when you just meet strangers constantly every day. And you know she's ordering at least 3 times a day. And if she's ordering slushes by themselves, I'm going to guess it could be 4, 5, 6, 7 times a day. Because what else is she doing? You know? I mean, she's doing Legos, obviously. She showed us some Legos that she's doing. But just because she has hobbies that she's doing while she's sitting at home doing nothing, that doesn't mean that's going to keep her from ordering food and drink, you know? In fact, she's probably more likely to be ordering DoorDash while she's doing her Legos. Because why wouldn't you eat and drink while you're doing your Legos? I wonder how greasy her Lego sets are. Oh, speaking of Legos.
So a lot of my builds I do not keep because I do so many. There's just literally no way. If I had like a whole room for all my builds, then that would be different. But genuinely, I just don't have enough room for all of them. So I actually give all the ones that I don't keep to my stepbrother.
Real quick, I made a comment on my last video, I pinned it, but I had a few people that were like, dude, you know that you can just take the Legos apart and put them back together, so it's not that big a deal. And I was like, have you ever tried to take a Lego set apart? It is, first of all, almost impossible, because once you put Legos together, especially the small ones, it is really hard to get them apart. But let's just say you're able to get almost all of them apart. There are still going to be chunks that are put together, or at least some pieces that are still together, so the instructions will be hard to follow. Plus, they've already been taken out of their numbered bags, so the instructions will be really hard to follow because you're going to be looking for specific pieces in all the pieces. The Lego sets always split it up into bags so it's easier to follow. So is it impossible for somebody to, you know, receive a completed Lego set, take it apart and put it back together? No, I guess it's not impossible, but it still just shows how shitty Amber is for doing the fun part with the instructions and the way it's intended, and then giving the completed set to her stepbrother to then, what, spend hours getting every little Lego apart just to then try to figure out the instructions? Like, my point still stands is that while it is possible for them to redo it, it's still super shitty of Amber to give it to them already put together. You know what I mean? But anyway, when it comes to the DoorDash stalker and the messages, the big lesson here that we can learn about Amberlynn, or that we already knew, but this just confirms, is that if Amberlynn can prove something with evidence, she will. Every time. Just like with her diabetes results, she took her diabetes test and got the results, and unprompted showed the results.
And regarding if I have diabetes or not, I want to show you this clip. All right, you guys, My results are in. I'm gonna click test results. Here's my hemoglobin A1C to determine am I diabetic or not. All right. No! Oh my gosh.
In that same video, she said that she had been diagnosed with hypothyroidism and never showed anything about that.
But there is something that I'm going to be going on medicine for. Turns out I have hypothyroidism.
So in the first video where she talks about the DoorDasher hitting on her, she shows the screenshot, again, unprompted. Nobody asked her to show the screenshot. She just did.
And I usually can catch a vibe. I can tell when someone's into me. And I've never had this happen to the point of the person literally messaging me on my DoorDash. So he literally messaged me and he was like, it was so good to see you. You're so beautiful. And then he asked if I was single and I was just like, what is happening? I mean, it definitely gave me a little pep in my step because I haven't been feeling the greatest physically due to my tooth and whatnot. I just didn't know that DoorDash drivers could literally hit on you in the DMs on there. I'm literally shook about it. And yeah, so that was a random moment in time.
So always keep in mind, if Amberlynn tells you something like that she's been diagnosed with something or somebody saw her in public and they got pictures or something like that, if she doesn't show proof, it is very unlikely that it happened. Because if she can prove something, she will, because she knows people don't believe her. And so she will immediately default to showing the proof, just like she did here. Now, I'm going to say this one last time. I am just working on the information that we have at this moment. And if somebody has figured out that these are fake, then obviously all of this is kind of pointless, other than, the fact that my point still stands is that you probably shouldn't be meeting up with your DoorDasher and making friends with them because they're strangers on the internet, sort of, by proxy. And if she can show proof, even if it's fake, Amber will always show it, So anyway, those were just my thoughts on this. I absolutely understand if you still don't believe these are real, because there is still a good possibility that they're fake. And this is what happens when you lie all the time and you fake things all the time. When something actually does happen, it makes it very difficult for anybody to believe her. It's a girl who cried wolf situation. But just given the information that we have, it just seems like a reach to try to make sense of how she would fake this, And a quick side note, somebody pointed this out to me in my email, and it was like, did you notice what clothes she changed into before ordering her slushie? And that is a good point. So when she went out with her mom and her grandma and went to her grandma's house, I guess, and they did the facial stuff and all that, she was wearing this, the dress mesh combo, her signature look. So her kind of normal look, it is just whatever it is. She's got the sleeves, she got whatever, okay? Now later she says this.
It's the same day though, but I came home and I immediately changed my clothes. I ordered me a medium blue slushie and I was like, yes.
First of all, I want to say this. I am not ever going to victim blame and say that anybody should ever be harassed for what they're wearing, or that any kind of harassment or, assault or anything like that is justified because of what somebody's wearing. Absolutely not. Even if somebody's walking down the street butt naked, it is not okay to talk to them inappropriately, touch them, anything like that. But I do want to point out that it's just strange that knowing this guy is likely going to bring her this order, or at the very least, it has been a recurring thing, she changes into this from her mesh dress combo. This is one of the things that she wears when she's trying to do her thirst trap TikTok stuff, So just pointing that out. I just think it's weird. And again, it doesn't make it okay to send messages like that, but I thought it was interesting to sort of try to see into her thought process as to why this particular outfit. Now, I will admit that she said it was because it was so hot.
I ordered me a medium blue slushie and I was like, yes, because it is so hot outside. Long sleeve was not doing it for me.
But still, she knows that the DoorDash guy is coming. It's just strange that she picked an outfit that is so cleavage heavy, So anyway, I just thought I'd share these thoughts with you. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you next time. I appreciate you guys so much. Take care.